Now, Studebaker, the late news with Phil Ellis. Did you know that America's leading lowest-priced cars are 4 in number instead of 3? Yes, you have 4 top-ranking cars to decide among in the lowest price field. 4 to see instead of 3. And the star of the 4, by every measure of money's worth, is the roomy, powerful, beautifully flight-streamed Studebaker Champion. The low delivered price of the Studebaker Champion buys you a car that's a standout in style and in gasoline mileage. What's more, the Champion is built with Studebaker's painstaking master craftsmanship. This gives the Champion structural soundness that resists wear for years. The Champion is outstanding, too, in special far advanced features, brakes that automatically adjust themselves, for example. Get a distinctive Studebaker Champion, one of America's 4 lowest-priced, largest-selling cars. Studebaker, builder of America's top-value, lowest-priced car, presents Phil Ellis with the news.
Good evening. Navy flyers in Korea say the Marines have entered Yeongdong-po, one of the suburbs of Seoul. And another Marine column is getting ready to cross the Han River near the Kimpo airfield, now firmly in Allied hands. The pilots of carrier-based Navy planes told of seeing roads all the way from Incheon to Yeongdong-po, choked with long lines of American trucks, jeeps, and tanks moving to the front. The Korean Communists are also moving troops and armor into the Seoul area, but American planes are giving them a rough time. Around the edges of the old South Korean beachhead, the Allies are scoring still other victories. American troops now have set up 2 bridgeheads on the west bank of the Naktung River. The newest is at a point 10 miles due west of Daegu. The other is farther to the south. In the Pohang area, heavy shelling from the battleship Missouri is credited with breaking up an enemy attack on Sunday. The Big Mo fired its powerful 16-inch guns point blank at North Korean concentrations. India has formally proposed that the United Nations General Assembly seat the Chinese Communists. The issue is expected to cause a bitter fight at the General Assembly session, which opens tomorrow. In the Security Council, meanwhile, General MacArthur has charged that Communist China furnished substantial, if not decisive, military aid to North Korea by releasing thousands of troops of Korean origin. MacArthur's report was read to the Council this afternoon by United States Delegate Warren Austin. Russia's Jacob Malik protested bitterly. The North Atlantic Council adjourned its meetings tonight without reaching agreement on plans for unified European defense. The 12-nation council announced that it warmly welcomed proposals for a unified military force to include American and German troops, but final decisions were put off until several members of the council have a chance to consult their governments again. One of retiring Defense Secretary Louis Johnson's aides has resigned. President Truman accepted the resignation of Hubert Howard, who was Munitions Board chairman under Johnson, with thanks for what Mr. Truman called superior service to the government. A Senate-House Conference Committee reached agreement today on legislation to control communists on the home front. The bill on which they agreed would require communists and Communist Front organizations to register with the government and would permit the jailing of suspected subversives in time of war or national emergency. Still facing Congress is the need for action on a new giant defense plan to rally the nation in case of an atomic attack. The plan was laid before Congress today by President Truman. Congress may not take up the program until January, but in the meantime, the President will create a temporary civil defense administration. And a masonry contractor in Chicago is hopping mad today because of a tape measure he bought at the 5 and 10. So mad, in fact, that he's suing the Woolworth Company. The tape was supposed to be 25 feet long, but instead it was 26 feet long. Well, the contractor found out about it when he built some buildings that were 1 foot too long. And on the stock market today, the closing Dow Jones averages show industrials up 0.93, railroads off 0.01, utilities up 0.29. The closing cotton futures, New York, October 40.95, December 40.65. New Orleans, October 40.65, December 40.55. It is the fervent hope of all that the state of North Carolina can manufacture a budget with sturdier framework than the average household budget. Anyway, today the budget makers sat down to try. We'll have details and other Tar Heel news as soon as Coleman Patterson is told of a truck with a very sturdy framework.
Thousands of businessmen all over the country have cut their hauling costs appreciably by switching to Studebaker trucks this year. These newest owners of Studebaker trucks, for the most part, are doing plenty of enthusiastic talking about their savings. They're spending far less money for gas and for repairs than they ever did before. They are economizing all the way every day. Their Studebaker trucks are showing them something new in pulling power, in staying power, and in earning power. And they're passing the good news along at every opportunity, with the result that there's a tremendous demand right now for more and more new Studebaker trucks. Stop in at a Studebaker showroom. See for yourself why Studebaker trucks are such standouts. Make arrangements to get your own Studebaker truck. Stretching the state's funds is the first story in our North Carolina news tonight.
How much is it going to cost? That's a universal question, and North Carolinians will soon know how much it's going to cost to operate the state government for the next biennium. Members of the Advisory Budget Commission sat down today and began the tedious task of hearing requests from the heads of 58 state agencies. Conferences with those who direct our governmental agencies will continue through September 27th. Then members of the Budget Commission will work out recommendations to be presented to the 1951 session of the General Assembly. Highlighting today's hearing was a request for an increase in funds to provide additional income for retired teachers and state employees. The Teachers and State Employees Retirement System asked the Commission to recommend the appropriation of $306,000 each year of the 1951-53 biennium. If this sum is granted, it will mean an increase in benefits for those who step down in the early days of the retirement system. The goal is a minimum monthly benefit of $40 for those who retired after 30 years of service. The Defense Department in Washington has released the following North Carolina casualties in the Korean area. Killed in action, Private Clyde J. Standback, nephew of Mrs. Daisy Standback of 107 Swan Street, Goldsboro. Wounded from this area, Private First Class Tommy E. Dixon, Jr., son of Mrs. Renner Dixon of 108 West Cotton Street in Farmville. Private First Class Carlton W. Nicholson, son of Mrs. Lucy Nicholson of 914 Rapid Street, Roanoke Rapids. Private First Class Russell M. Sessoms, son of Mrs. Wilma E. Sessoms of 513 Summit Avenue in Lumberton. Private First Class Ethelbert B. Temple, son of Mrs. Eula G. Temple of Route Number 3, Elizabeth City, and also wounded Sergeant First Class Millard R. Turner, son of Mrs. Rachel Turner of Route Number 1, Lucama. Well, big business is good business for a municipality or a state, and several state and municipal leaders acknowledged that fact today in Greensboro. Officials of Sears Roebuck had gathered in the Guilford County Center for a quarterly business meeting, and Governor Scott headed the list of distinguished persons on hand to greet the visitors. Colonel Ernest E. Norris of Washington, president of the Southern Railroad, also took part in welcoming ceremonies. Incidentally, Norris told the assembled businessmen that American railroads stand ready again to meet the challenge of the nation's war needs. Greensboro will also be the scene of a big political rally late next month. Plans were announced today for a Democratic get-together, the 6th Congressional District Rally on October 26th. The Greensboro meeting next month is only one of many designed to turn out the voters for the general election in November. Despite the coming of cool weather, officials of the State Board of Health say there's been no noticeable decline in the number of cases of polio. 17 new cases were reported over the 3-day weekend just concluded. Wake County reported 5 new cases, Davidson 2, and Allegheny, Caldwell, Durham, Haywood, Montgomery, Pitt, Randolph, Robeson, Scotland, and Buncombe counties each had 1 new case of polio. So far this year, North Carolina has had 465 cases reported. Officials at the Greater University of North Carolina are ready to spread the welcome mat for their new president. Gordon Gray, now on special assignment for President Truman, is expected on the Chapel Hill campus by September 25th. Mr. Gray returned to Washington last night after attending a reception for new students at Chapel Hill. University officials say Mr. Gray may have to spend a few more days in Washington even after he takes over his duties at Chapel Hill. The new president-elect will be installed officially in ceremonies at each branch of the university beginning on October 8th. Incidentally, the university's Department of Pharmacology is opening the fall term with a new director. He's Dr. Thomas C. Butler. Before joining the faculty at Chapel Hill, Dr. Butler was Associate Professor of Pharmacology and Experimental Therapeutics in the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. The new head of the UNC Department of Pharmacology is widely known for his research in pharmacology of various hypnotic and anesthetic agents. Within the past 24 hours, officials of State College in Raleigh have announced the addition of 2 atomic scientists to its faculty. Dr. Raymond L. Murray of Oak Ridge, Tennessee, will serve as professor in the first nuclear engineering course to be offered by any school. Tonight, Dean J.H. Lampe and Dr. Clifford K. Beck, head of the physics department, say Dr. Newton Underwood, a wartime scientist with the world-famed Manhattan Project at Columbia University, has been named a professor of physics and research scientist at State College. State College is the first institution in the country to have been given permission to build an atomic pile and the first to offer courses in nuclear engineering. Well, faced with an indefinite suspension of sales, the demand for tobacco on the 4 flu-cured markets in this area was strong today, and prices were steady to higher than those reported at the end of the day on Friday. Most offerings on the border belt were steady to $1 higher. A rise of from $1 to $4 per hundred was reported from the eastern belt. The middle belt reported increases of from $1 to $8 per hundred, while the old belt showed a strong demand for offerings and price increases of from $1 to $5 in most instances. Sales will be suspended after the day on Wednesday, and directors of the Bright Belt Warehouse Association will meet early next week to pick a date for reopening the markets. Raleigh's new city manager took his oath of office today. Mayor P.D. Snipes swore in William Hudson Carper as the capital city's new manager. Carper came to Raleigh from Burlington. He succeeds Roy S. Braden, who resigned several weeks ago. And Goldsboro's mayor, Scott Berkeley, has an accomplishment not usually associated with his honor. Berkeley is a whiz at milking a cow, and he's issued a challenge to mayors of 26 other Tar Heel cities and towns. Mayor Berkeley's offered to put his title of the milkingest mayor in Tarhelia on the line in a winner-take-all contest at the Wayne County Fair. The fair is scheduled for next week. The trophy in the cow milking contest will be a battered milk pail, and naturally it'll go to the mayor who gets the most milk in the shortest time. Most sections of North Carolina can expect ideal weather tomorrow with slightly warmer temperatures. The weatherman says the trend will be due to an increased flow of southerly winds. Some high cloudiness will blanket the state tonight, but this condition is expected to clear by noon tomorrow. The current outlook for Raleigh and vicinity, partly cloudy and mild tonight and tomorrow. Low tonight 62, the high tomorrow 83. Today's high was 77 degrees. For North Carolina in general, partly cloudy and mild tonight and tomorrow. Winds along the Carolina coast will be moderate to occasionally fresh, northeasterly through tomorrow. Present official Raleigh temperature is 70 degrees. So when a couple walks into a cafe and asks for beer, that's not news. But when you embellish the situation a little, you have the makings of something of a yarn. We'll embellish in a moment. Now here's Coleman Patterson with a hot tip on a gilt-edged investment.
One great satisfaction in owning a Studebaker car or a Studebaker truck is the daily proof it gives you of its enduring soundness. The world's most painstaking automotive craftsman seldom a need for a serious repair. What's more, the inbuilt stamina of a Studebaker helps to make it an especially desirable investment in the eyes of knowing used car buyers. Foresighted people who appreciate how much mileage a Studebaker is good for are particularly eager to become owners of used Studebakers. Well, a sober pachyderm is all right, but one that wants beer should be regarded with a skeptical eye.
The bartender turned pale this morning when Bill Williams walked into a Natchez, Mississippi cafe and ordered 2 beers. He looked over Bill's shoulder at Dinah and suddenly remembered an engagement elsewhere. When the customers turned to look, they bolted too. Bill, who works for the Kelly Morris Circus, was surprised. Dinah, it's true, is a 2-ton elephant, but Bill explained Dinah's a gentle, carefully bred animal, and she wouldn't hurt a fly. Well, Bill and Dinah crashed through the cafe door looking for beer at about 4 a.m. They stayed about an hour before officers persuaded Bill to lead Dinah back to the circus. After that, the police led Bill to jail. But they promised to let him out in time for tonight's circus performance. And that's all the news up to this moment. This is Phil Ellis saying good night.
Listen each evening at 6:45 for the latest news with Phil Ellis. Tonight's sponsor was Studebaker, builder of fine motor cars and trucks. And remember, all the armed forces are accepting volunteers right now. Yes, all the armed forces. Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, and Coast Guard. Complete information is obtainable at any recruiting office. Coleman Patterson speaking. Next news summary at 7:15.